for some companies or marketers, perhaps having one or two pieces of press is all you need, right? Because they want to do an SEO play or they want something that they could push out on it through their digital marketing efforts. In those instances, if budget is there, then paid can be a nice option because it's kind of just like a simple means to the end that you're looking for. We help a lot of clients though on the paid route because even that can use some guidance if you've never done it before. I think that earned media works really well if you have a CEO or a founder that really has an opportunity to distinguish her or his voice and become sort of elevated within that industry. That's really an opportunity for earned media because then you can lean into newsjacking and sort of the industry trends and sort of just what's happening in the world that you can sort of position your CEO as that thought leader in, and that can work quite well.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing Podcasts. Here's Kevin.
I'm Kevin Lee with the E-Marketing Association. Super excited to be chatting today with Annie Scranton, who started Pace Public Relations and is the CEO. And so one of the everyone comes to PR from different angles. So let's start with your evolution into PR, which is you started from the editorial side and then decided to move over to PR. So I'd love to hear the journey and what was the catalyst for you deciding, okay, PR folks are not doing a good job. I can jump in and do a better job.
Well, I don't know that I set out with that in mind because really I started my career in PR because I got laid off from my job as a TV news producer. So it was sort of an idea that was spurred off of a difficult moment. I spent the first decade of my career as a TV news producer. So I worked at Good Morning America and Fox News and CNBC and CNN. As a booker. So I was responsible for finding the interesting guests who would come on and be interviewed by whoever the anchor was I was working with at that time. When the show I was working on got canceled, I I sent everyone in my network an email saying, show got canceled, lost my job, can you help? And I got an email back that really changed the whole course of my life. It was from a publicist who I had worked with frequently, bringing his clients on CNBC. He said, Annie, I don't think you have any formal PR training, but you seem to know a lot of people. You need a job. He said, I have this client. He's a broker. He just wrote a book on the markets. If you could get him booked on any show on CNBC, I'll pay you $500. And I said, all right, well, let me see. So I checked him out. He looked like a great guest. I sent his info to my producer friend who was booking for the 1 p.m. hour. And she said, great, can he come on tomorrow? And that was sort of my, proverbial light bulb moment where I said, okay, I think there's something here.
Right, right. Yeah, before we jump into some further questions, people tend to use publicists somewhat interchangeably with other sort of forms of PR professionals, yet it still exists as its own word. So do you still see a strong distinction between a publicist and sort of other PR professionals who are on the front lines?
Yeah, I think if you say communications, it can mean, there's a lot of different spokes within that wheel of comms. I think most people, when they think of PR, they're thinking of their external image and they're thinking of that usually in the lens of media. That's certainly what we focus on. And there's a million other aspects that go into it, but I think like PR and comms is evolving where there used to just be more opportunities on the PR front because
Mhm.
there were more media outlets. Media is shrinking now, so there's not as many media outlets. So those of us in comms are supporting our clients through paid opportunities or through thought leadership or through marketing efforts or content creation. However, the earned media portion, getting great write-ups, getting featured on TV, being part of a big podcast, those are still really, really important, but and it's even harder to achieve those now, which is why I think it's still really important to have a great publicist going to bat for you.
Yeah, I certainly think of earned media as the umbrella that sort of covers all of that stuff, including traditional PR, digital PR, anything where it's not paid, although the lines have gotten a little bit blurry there as well. So, for folks who are sort of thinking about earned media, how far should they think about that umbrella, and how should they think about the professionals who handle that, like that, covering that umbrella, like the internal comms people versus external professionals? How should they structure things in their brain?
Well, I think it really just comes down to what are the goals? What are the goals of the company that you work for or that you're a part of? And earned media can be a great vehicle for raising legitimacy, credibility, and of course, just overall brand awareness. And so it depends though, because for some companies or marketers, perhaps having one or two pieces of press is all you need, right? Because they want to do an SEO play or they want something that they could push out on through their digital marketing efforts. In those instances, if budget is there, then paid can be a nice option because it's kind of just like a simple means to the end that you're looking for. We help a lot of clients though on the paid route because even that can use some guidance if you've never done it before. I think that earned media works really well if you have a CEO or a founder that really has an opportunity to distinguish her or his voice and become sort of elevated within that industry. That's really an opportunity for earned media because then you can lean into newsjacking and sort of the industry trends and sort of just what's happening in the world that you can sort of position your CEO as that thought leader in, and that can work quite well.
Absolutely. You mentioned SEO, and it's interesting because I started in SEO before did it bought three PR agencies. We love the storytelling features that those professionals had. But used to be that sort of PR was thought about as, oh, I got a hit, right? And that hit happened in a particular slice of time, and it made its way into the weekly or monthly report that the PR agency gave to their client, and then it was sort of like out of mind, right? But as Google started crawling all this stuff and SEO became important, it's sort of like you would start to think about it as evergreen. Like, okay, this thing's there forever, right? I can point to it, it's going to show up in search. And then people started to think about it from a social media perspective, like, okay, I can point to it, I can reference it, I can use it, I can reuse it. And so it really changed this idea of PR as a hit, right? To PR as something like, oh no, it has life. It lives on potentially forever, for better or worse, right? Including 60 Minutes, which doesn't always portray you in a good way if you end up on that.
I mean, 100%. I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't think about how to long tail a
Right.
media clip at this point. Whether it's the best clip ever or it's something you don't want out there. SEO is a great avenue to boost or sort of decrease the visibility of an earned media or TV news clip. When if you go on Fox News Channel and there's going to be 3 million people watching you at any given day, that's amazing. That's phenomenal. That's a lot of eyeballs. But there's like how many billions of people that live in this country, and all of those people have not seen, they weren't watching Fox News at that one precise, 3-minute stint that you were on. So we have a medical doctor as a client, and her SEO specialist, has done phenomenal work. We'll get her on Fox News. Okay. And then she codes it and she does all the SEO stuff where it's, when someone's searching best medical weight loss doctor in New York City, she comes up, on that first search of Google. That's how you drive business. It's by having your client or your company show up on that first page of Google. But if it's a news clip or an earned media clip, it is still perceived as credible, legitimate, neutral. It's not overtly salesy. And it's a way for a potential customer or client or patient to watch you and see you, and develop their own kind of opinion on if they want to pursue working with you.
Yeah, that's a great point. We've seen a huge resurgence in interest in SEO beyond the domain name of the individual because of this sort of digital PR implication. And that isn't just from a social proof and a halo effect of the brand necessarily, but it's also as a result of how AI works, right? AI engines, the LLM models, they go out and they crawl everything and they digest it and they try to understand what is all this content? What does it mean? Who is it talking about? What's the context? And then when somebody asks that same question of ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, it's a completely different algorithm. And it uses all the stuff that's out there. So it used to be that like SEO was just all about let me get my domain to rank. But the good SEO professionals understood that this they call it barnacle SEO in the world of SEO, which is let me maybe try to control as much of that search engine results page as possible with good PR mentions, with content on LinkedIn, with social media content, et cetera. And that's paid huge dividends for the people who were doing it 5 years ago, because now the LLMs are starting to find that stuff and rank that, dietitian or plastic surgeon or whatever it is really well.
That's right. Yeah, our SEO specialists are really asking and pushing of us to not have the main URL as the link in an article, or that links back, and having various subpages, for the reasons that you just mentioned. AI, the algorithms, everything's changing so quickly. But really the name of the game, I think, right now in terms of like overall marketing and comms is you can't lean into any one thing too much, because personally, I feel like the media landscape, marketing, AI, social media, it's all evolving in real time, and nobody knows exactly how it's going to play out. But if you have a firm or a comms professional who knows how to direct you in a multitude of areas and also matches that up against what your goals are, you should be able to feel pretty confident.
That's a great point. So one other thing that I've noticed happen in the last few years, because you mentioned Fox News and some of the other sort of broadcast channels,
Mhm.
is you've had situations where the individual broadcast talent has started to eclipse the broadcast social media footprint of their parent brand. And so you've got the situation where a particular sort of personality on a broadcast brand, they sort of made their chops, right, by being part of that, whatever it is, Fox News or MSNBC or whatever, wherever it was. And now their social media footprint exceeds that of the individual sort of umbrella brand. So it's almost like a PR professional has to think not just about, oh, I got the hit on Fox News or I got the hit on WABC in New York, right? You have to think about, okay, well, who did I get the hit with, and do they have a big social media footprint, or are they going to post it on their socials as well? And it's so you get this sort of ripple effect as a result of these individuals having their own footprint. Do you think about that when you think about your placements?
Of course, absolutely. I mean, if we're just going TV, but even for magazines, editors and anchors have their own personality. They're known for various things, specific things that they're interested in. And to your point, anchors, magazine editors have become their own brand. They've become their own personal brand. So they're part of a bigger brand, but then they have their own personal brand. And then a lot of them go on to actually create their own bigger brand, independent, news journalism, which I think is wonderful, but and it's sort of a new and emerging, from Substack, those kinds of outlets. So yes, we think about that very deeply, and work our magic to try to get the anchor or the editor to post it on their social, because that's sort of like direct marketing, right? You're going directly to your followers. A hit on Fox News or a feature in Allure magazine, that's great. That's doing the bigger picture stuff. But if you can get that in concert with the specific social promotion, you're just increasing your chances, of overall visibility.
So let's talk a little bit about the advertorial as it relates to, again, these professionals. Some of those professionals who, if you get the hit on their sort of parent show, they're sort of also independent and they have their own social media. And some of those, as a result, are open to advertorial, not necessarily always within the parent brand, but independently, either as a result of having left to that parent brand and they're independent now, or there may still be opportunities for you to get coverage independently with that person, depending on the contract they have with their sort of broadcast entity. And I think that's obviously fascinating from a business evolution perspective. I'd love to think about sort of influencer advertorial and an advertorial within a publishing or a broadcast brand, and how you think about that as an accelerant, right? If they don't they don't have time to craft that perfect story, right? Or they want the story to be more about themselves, right? Because a lot of PR, you end up coming along with the story, or you're providing commentary on a bigger trend. Whereas sometimes they want it to be about them, and in order for it to be about them, they need to cross over into advertorial or paid influencer posts. And so, I'd
Yeah,
love to hear how you
absolutely.
how you structure that conversation with the client about, okay, how should we do this?
I mean, so budget is definitely top of mind because paid sponsored advertorial, that's going to be a much higher budget and price point. But to your point, you have a much bigger say in sort of how it's written, and it's going to come off as an amazing piece, on your company or whatever it is that you're doing, which is wonderful because you can put on your website like as seen in Fast Company or as seen in Wall Street Journal or whatever. But for most of us who are savvy media consumers, we're gonna know, the difference between earned article versus a sponsored one. So I think it reverts back to goals. And if SEO is a main driver of new client acquisition, then that could be something interesting to pursue and think about. Same thing on the influencer side, but I think on the influencer side, you're able to get more mileage for your budget. And you're also able to really see in real time the engagement and the feedback and the comments, which is going to inform all parts of your strategy moving forward. And it's also a little bit of an easier lift, to kind of like test the waters, and get some of that like real person feedback. But it's very important. Influencer is something we get asked about all the time. And I think that too, consumers are getting smarter, right? About saying, okay, this person's getting paid to push this product, but that's okay, because people are still buying products that, from that's how consumers are learning about new products, learning about new places to go on vacation, learning about this. So that's okay to a degree.
So, did it evolve into the, PR industry as a result of SEO, right? We made a couple of acquisitions of small PR agencies as sort of acqui-hires. And so, you know, my perspective as it relates to where the sort of advertorial and influencer stuff should sit is really where those storytelling professionals become really heavily involved. But there are a lot of media buying agencies who've decided that they want to grab onto it. And my argument to anyone deciding, should I give this to my media agency or should I give it to sort of the earned media team, either internally or within the agency, is that, the story has to come over at least a little bit authentic, and it should in fact be a story, right? And I'm sort of concerned that there may be some CMOs or marketing professionals that think like, oh, well, this is paid media, so I don't need this sort of storytelling talent involved.
Yeah, that definitely, I do not agree with that. Because I think it's, people are not like buying products, they're buying a feeling. They're buying like that they can be in on something, that they want to be a part of. And that commercials tell a story, like sponsored content tells a story. In an ideal world, you want to have both. want to be pitching it editorially on the earned side, but having the paid to support it, I think is a great way to drive that narrative. And of course, you have owned media as well, so you can post it on your own channels, whatever it is, that story that you want to tell. The more you can do that's working in concert, the stronger overall it's going to be. But really, it does different things. The earn side really is building that legitimacy and that credibility and that overall brand awareness. And paid is really there as a vehicle to, reach more of your direct audience.
Right. Brings up a follow-up question, which is some VPs of marketing, CMOs, or brand managers are not as comfortable sort of giving the latitude to an influencer to sort of put their own voice into something, right? And they're used to being able to hand a commercial script to somebody and say, okay, here's the commercial. Because they're used to actors, right? And influencers are, they may be able to act, but they're not actors, right? They have a particular voice. Their voice resonates with their audience, and they also have to protect their own reputation. So they need to make sure that whatever they do, whether it's paid or not, it's got to sort of work for them, right? Otherwise, they may as well pass on it. I think it's been difficult for some marketers to understand, like, no, you have to this is not a script. You're not going to hand the person a script. You have to work collaboratively with this individual to create that content.
Yeah, and I think it really comes down to doing your research, because you're absolutely right. In any communication, internal or external, it needs to be authentic for it to really resonate and to work. And that's hopefully why you have a strong PR and comms team that can do the research for you on the influencers. There's great platforms like Influencer Hero that make it really easy to kind of just like see the influencer, their engagement, sort of how they're viewed amongst their viewers or subscribers. And you can have and will have an to align, right, on messaging or a light script, but that's part of the influencer world is you want it to be in their own voice, otherwise it should just be a robot or your CEO out there saying whatever they're going to say. That's the whole point. And it is a bit of a leap of faith, but since you are paying for it, you definitely have more of that control.
Yeah, another follow-up question. I mean, you mentioned a platform that's good for influencer discovery, right? But you've also got, the Muckracks, the Decisions, and the Meltwaters of the world, which used to be, they defined journalist, right, pretty tightly, but they've also obviously had to expand the reach of what they're considering to be a journalistic talent, right? So I'm in there under the e-marketing association, right, as a journalist. Would I think of myself as a journalist? I try to hold the journalistic standards to a great extent. I don't think of myself as a journalist, right? But they have to think of me as a journalist because people will want to reach me, maybe become a guest on the pod or participate in the e-marketing association as even a guest podcaster, right? So it's sort of interesting that you, I guess, have found the need to have both the traditional journalist discovery and monitoring platforms as well as an influencer monitoring platform, an influencer discovery platform as a PR professional.
100%. And that is newer for us for sure. And while influencer is being used, I think, in every industry, it is more heavily dominated in the lifestyle side, and there's a CPG that you're pushing. I'm also a muckrack. I have a podcast, right? The PR Pays podcast. So, I mean, a podcast is a media outlet. Okay,
Yeah.
great, but influencer is really, you're living on social, right? And so it just is a stream to go through all the social platforms, and get all of that data. You can do it on your own, but at the end of the day, all of these products out there are helping us with time management as well. And that's really the benefit, I think, of these various platforms that we subscribe to.
Great. So let's move a little bit tactical. One thing that I learned from my PR teams over the years was that sometimes your company can't be the story. And so sometimes you have to figure out, like, what's the story that your company fits into if you're not just going to do commentary on news or current events or whatever, or piggyback on something that's already being written about. and you'd like to get something new written about or created, you can pitch a bigger story and get coverage, right? So Peter Shankman, for example, mentioned this to me probably 10 years ago. And so when I was putting my Fire Island house up for sale and I wanted to get PR for it, I'm like, well, there's no way they're going to cover it. Yes, it is an Architectural Digest kind of a house, but that's not going to do it. So, I pitched the editor of the Wall Street Journal Mansion section on sort of a bigger story and managed to get this amazing piece that, we fit into it, right? But it was that kind of a strategy. So I'd love to hear how you advise folks to identify these sort of thematic stories and then pitch those to the editorial team, and maybe
Yeah, I mean,
get a hit like that.
as part of our onboarding process, we and ongoing conversations with clients, we always are asking them, what are you seeing within your industry? What are the
Right.
trends you're identifying? What are the big moments coming up for you and your peers? And that's pitching a trend story, a trend story that's also attached to data. Any new survey, study, et cetera, that's a really strong vehicle for journalists to get them to pay attention because a feature stories exist absolutely, and that's kind of like what you're usually always aiming for with clients, but there is that fine line between it being an editorial feature story and oh, well then just pay for this, pay for it and we'll do it as run it as an ad or a sponsored content. So if you're pitching a trend, then it's something that's seen as more newsy, and less promotional for your specific client. So I just was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal today, actually, from a former client from a long time ago who wrote a book about her like escapades, I guess, as a young journalist, and she got involved in drugs and alcohol, et cetera, et cetera. But the piece wasn't about that book. The piece was about how there's a whole group of middle-aged writers who now are sort of low-key writing these very, unabashed memoirs because they have kids and they don't want their kids to read about everything that they did, 20 years ago or whatever. And that was the point of the whole piece. It wasn't about, but as a result, this particular author, her photo, the cover of her book, I mean, the link to it, I mean, she's going to 100% sell a lot of books after being in this article today.
Right, right. Great point. So for 2025, what else should we be talking about from an earned media perspective? Are there any other topics that you feel should be top of mind for marketing pros within the industry or at the client side?
I do. I think on the lifestyle side, affiliate marketing is going to continue to be really, really important. You can't get a product placement on the earn side without also having affiliate. We you mentioned before, some blurred lines here. That's sort of that it's just become the industry norm now.
Mm.
So you have to have affiliate marketing, and I think having somebody who's really strong at it is a huge asset because that does make money on behalf of your client. I also think it within social, Reddit is becoming a really big hotspot. We're just starting to hear more and more of our clients talking about that because there isn't a way yet that SEO professionals have figured out how to either suppress or amplify the various threads in there. But there are some tactics, there are some limited tactics that you can do to help your client navigate if there is, in particular, a not so great Reddit thread happening. So I think those two areas are going to be pretty big this year.
Great. Final question. Some folks say there's no such thing as bad PR, but I think those of us in the industry will say there is such a thing as bad PR, and there's sort of a reputation management element to PR that sort of bridges into SEO. So, do you agree that there is such a thing as bad PR, and some people should think about reputation management as well?
Absolutely. 100%. I think reputation matters more than ever. It is very easy to find out something negative about a prospective client or customer if you spend 5 minutes on Google, and that can be very damaging and very harmful. So absolutely. And, it's also not even just bad PR, but you want your PR to be impactful. If you get press, but it doesn't really do anything for you, then what was the point, right? So I think just having intention behind your comms is quite important for this year ahead.
Great. Thanks so much for joining me, Annie. And that we've covered a lot of great topics.
Thank you for having me.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in the Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.